Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, an inspired conversation space between Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner on the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness.
We keep our conversations honest, our experiences real, and our philosophies exploratory. We believe that in order to raise incredible humans, we first have to raise ourselves. We know that in order to rock the family, you've got to nourish the mother. If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively, head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietenner.love to go deeper. And for all live streamed pre-release podcasts and all our free content, head over to our free Facebook group, Nourishing the Mother with Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood, and this week we don't have Julie Tenner with us, but we do have a very special guest, Susana Frioni. Well, welcome, Susana.
Hi, Bridget.
Now, I am juiced up and super excited to have you on the podcast, but first I want to tell all the women listening a little bit about you before we dive into why you're here and why I'm juiced up. So for the last 10 plus years, Susana Frioni has had an insatiable curiosity about all things love, sex, and desire. This curiosity led her to share the best of what she was living and learning through her podcast, Love, Sex, Desire, and start an online coaching practice dedicated to helping women transform their own relationships and lives. It also led to the creation of Sacred Dance, the ultimate embodiment experience combining music, movement, and mindfulness. Since its inception, Susana has danced with 2,500 plus women in groups as large as 150 and as small as 6 across Australia, New Zealand, and America. Susana now offers a sacred dance teacher training and mentorship program. You can find her living off-grid on the Sunshine Coast with her partner, teenage daughter, and blue cattle dog, which I must say sounds idyllic from where we are in the lockdown capital of practically the world.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So I am so jazzed to have you here because I got to spend an incredible 3 hours dancing with you just this weekend gone. And I'm still riding the high of it. So tell us a little bit more, I think, first of all, about why sacred dance? Why does it matter?
I almost just want to go, tell me all about it. Tell me I'm still feeling juiced up. Like, what are you experiencing? I want to hear it all, but I will answer your question first.
Thank you.
Look, sacred dance is something that evolved out of my own necessity to really reconnect back to me. When I think of the quarter life crisis that I had, that eventually led to the separation of my, then husband, the father of my daughter, who will be 16 this year. She was 4 at the time, so a long time ago. I also fell in love with a woman at that time. It was a huge, rediscovery process. And through sort of, I guess, the sexual discovery and also the spiritual discovery, I learned about meditation and yoga, and these practices that led me back home to myself were very serious, maybe, and I guess just a lot of stillness, a lot of non-attachment, cool, calm, collective, which was great. But after a few years of that, I could feel that part of me, that used to be wild and used to have a lot of fun. Like, where did she go? And it was on the dance floor. I think it was out of 5 rhythms that a friend had invited me to. And I just went, there she is.
I found her again.
Yeah. And I think it's such a turning point, not just with motherhood, but as you sort of start to leave that nightclub scene that tends to fuel and nourish that part of you, it's suddenly where are these places where you can go and have a good time and not get drunk or not have drugs? Not that I was big into drugs growing up, but there just weren't these spaces. And an opportunity arose for me to literally, I had 60 minutes at a wellness retreat to do whatever I wanted. And I was like, I'm bringing the best of music. I'm bringing the best of my movement background, because I had been, you know, a group fitness teacher for about 8 years and then a yoga teacher for 4 years. And then my love for just mindfulness and what that really, it's like the magic sauce, that kind of attention to the present moment, I think is where it, like, you can fall in love with washing the dishes with that kind of deep presence. I truly believe that. Some of you might be going, no way. But in my experience, I just think it's the magic sauce. And I created this experience, and it was just, well, as you experienced on Saturday night.
Delicious.
There's almost no words to really describe it. I think because there aren't many spaces for it. And actually, one of the students who graduated from the first teacher training attended her very first event with me in Brisbane. So not the weekend just gone, but the weekend before. And she's someone who's also done a lot of like the erotic arts dancing. And she was like, this encompasses all of it. So it's not just the sexy or sensual part of you, but you get to also be just wild and crazy and silly. You get to also just be slow and chill, or you get to have like that high energy ecstatic experience as well. So such a beautiful reflection, because I think as women, there's such a spectrum.
Yeah.
And so many dimensions and facets, and to have one place where you can either evoke or cultivate or nourish, and that's like a big theme, obviously, for audience. I think it's pretty special.
I love the way you explain that, because it is actually such a welcoming of so many parts of the self. And when you said, you know, I've spent so long kind of in the mindfulness, yoga, kind of non-attachment, observing, conscious, like too conscious for your own good, right? Space, there can be a disconnection to like that depth of feeling, that releasing, that wildishness. And what I found you do so beautifully was create a journey, because it really was that, like a journey where you got to go and lean into all of those pieces of yourself, where all of them were welcome. And so much safety was established, when traditionally, if we've ever entered a dance floor as a woman, there's been a very narrow realm of safety.
Yes. And I always think back to my days on the dance floor where, you know, that natural expression that wants to move through me is naturally quite sensual and sexual. And it would always be misinterpreted as an invitation for like unwanted attention. And it'd be like, I don't want to spend my time having to, you know,
rip people's hands off me, like,
or like in my space, but more just stay in the expression of it. And literally, like for me, it's just making love to the music, or music making love to me, whichever way you want to, you know, view it, see it. But and it's another reason why, you know, at this point, I'm not interested in having men in the space, because they naturally just change the dynamics. And there's something about women being able to be in that space fully and freely. And as you said, like safely. So anything, you know, and again, you have to set the boundaries of the safety so women can actually do that, because the reality is, yeah, there aren't many spaces.
There's really not. And I think that's probably one of the biggest gifts of what you create, because women don't actually often realize what they're missing until they have an experience like that, or of that reclamation of that piece that had become long buried.
Totally. Like you can't, and even more so, you know, how do you know if you really enjoy something if you've never tasted it?
Yeah. And how often too, as women, do we go, oh, I don't need that. Oh, like I won't take up that space. Or this is fine, right? Like the status quo.
Yeah, this is fine. Or even, you know, it's really uncomfortable. It can feel quite edgy. I think when you get too heady about it, the idea of I'm dancing freely, like I'm not given, you know, any steps to follow, which means I really have to, why do I have to listen to my body and just trust that it wants to move? And I'm not a dancer. Isn't that like really awkward? Or, you know, I guess you can get really, that inner critic can really get activated if that's not your usual terrain. I just say anytime we step outside our comfort zone, be it on a dance floor or some other aspect of life, your inner critic gets loud. And I always say just, it's almost like an applause, because the louder the inner critic gets, the clearer the sign is for you that you are stepping into new territory for yourself. You are.
That's such a great reframe.
Yeah, like,
because often we don't want to go near that because it's like, well, no, like that doesn't feel safe because the voice is getting louder and like the self-flagellation's getting louder. But actually that's all kind of like where your comfort zone is beginning to end.
That's right. I just go, it's a reinforcement. It's like a little pat on the back, like, yes, okay, new territory, which means I'm leaning into some new possibilities, which is where your expansion ultimately is.
So you've said you've worked with thousands of women. Over that time and over building relationships with so many women, what have you found overwhelmingly that they tend to bring to a dance experience?
So in terms of like the mental realm, I always see like two very distinct groups. One is, you know, the fear of holding back because they're just going to be too awkward. Like I'm dancing freely without any alcohol, or I'm just really uncoordinated. I don't have any sense of my body and I'm going to look like a fool or an idiot. So there's that. And then on the flip side is am I being too sexual? Am I, you know, too much in my expression? They're the two dominant ones. And it's very rare that they coexist, like one person's experiencing both. They tend to be, I'm either on this side or on this side.
And I wonder how they so beautifully invoke each other, you know, like in terms of like inner room dynamic, how they kind of push each other to grow past those places.
Yeah, and I even reflect on the Melbourne experience, and there was a woman there who I think naturally is, well, I imagine she's had quite a journey in like her own sensuality and sexuality, but she made an intention of like moving really ridiculously and silly to the point, you know, she said a little, she goes, at one point I felt like Mr. Bean.
Oh yes, that was so good.
Is so beautiful, because I think even if, you know, your own sensuality and sexuality, if that's your comfort zone, then the edge is to like play in the other realms of, can you be a bit lighter? Can you be a little bit more playful? Can you be silly? Or can you be really serious? So I think that's, you know, a beautiful thing again. And just
actually love that. And in fact, the way you open, is it okay if I like, I won't say too much, but can I say a little bit about the experience that I had? So the way that you opened it, I was so frustrated because you put on this like song that I just wanted to like, you know, unleash with, like to start it. And you made us stand there, not moving, and feel it. And that was an excruciating experience. But with that lens that you're saying, where you almost do the opposite of what feels like your expression, just to kind of build tension. Yes, because it totally did that. And it was almost like, I don't know, like kind of seductive, even because I couldn't go there and I wanted to.
Yes, it's my favorite exercise, like experiential exercise. And it's really an exercise in desire. So the thing that I do, not always, but sometimes is, as part of like the intro into the journey, is we just crank a song and not move as a way of practicing, like, can we notice where the music is, like, as we listen, and listening is a really receptive skill. So you have to open up to receive. And as we're receiving that music in my body, can we then start to pay like attention with where do we feel it? Like feelings, like sort of the next phase of the sacred dance journey, and feel it physically. Is it landing in certain parts? Emotionally, does a song, you know, evoke a lot of emotion or even memories or images? Because music has a way of teleporting us definitely into the, you know, past experiences if we have strong associations with the song. But essentially, it's unlocking an energy within your body. And if you can witness it long enough that you don't like instantly react, a couple of things happen. Something that I've noticed is, yes, it definitely builds in intensity, but it almost like fills your entire body up and starts to like spread out to all these new places. It almost takes up a lot of residence within you. So it's, instead of maybe short-circuiting the process, you give it a moment to really build and enhance, kind of like an orgasm, essentially.
That was almost like what it was. It was like this tension point, like, can I hold this tension point, right? Like before I'm allowed to release.
Yes. And I think, you know, then beyond a dance floor, it's a really great exercise. I think once you've had that experience, the reality is you're experiencing desires all the time, whether you're really aware of them or not. And your desires, like, you have no say in what you want, is the other thing. You have a say in definitely how you interact and relate and maybe act on that desire, but the desire itself, you have absolutely no say. And so when maybe a desire comes up that feels like it's wrong or you shouldn't be having that desire, the practice of being really with it, witnessing it almost just unlocks an energy within you. It reveals more information that informs maybe how you want to act on a particular desire. So that's one of the reasons why I love that particular experiential exercise.
It kind of lengthens that space in between a habitual response and a potential future response.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a habitual response, as we know, is always based on historical data and conditioning, and usually not what is authentic, true, or real to you in this moment.
Yeah. I say to a lot of clients, and you know, often in this work, you know, that all human behavior is patterned, like that we're just playing out patterns. But I loved how you actually spoke about, you know, our body takes the shape of a whole host of patterns of movement, of like what's safe and not safe in our body to feel. And I loved that distinction that you made, because it's true. We'll see our own habitual movements on the dance floor too, and perhaps even get a chance to see, well, when did I develop that?
Yes.
I feel myself moving in that way. What does it remind me of? Because I said to you even at the end, like, I felt myself meeting, you know, the 16-year-old drunk me on a revolving dance floor on a podium, right? Like, and
still there.
She's still there somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And that, you know, and the part of me that felt afraid there, the part of me that really wanted to be there, but the part of me that felt afraid there, whether I was safe in my body, for the very reason that you touched on earlier, which was that so often we're held up to almost like an exhibit as women dancing, like it's for someone else, and that a woman dancing for herself, like that can be really hard to find that line when we've been so trained almost in many ways to be performative.
Yes, definitely. And I think, or at least from my direct experience, of when you begin dancing for the pure nourishment of yourself, I believe you start to realize like what a gift it is for anyone to witness you in that kind of expression. Like a real gift. And I know we spoke about this on the night, like a reframe of, if, you know, you catch someone looking at you dancing, instead of maybe instantly thinking you're being judged, just kind of view it through the world or through the lens that actually they're taking in my beauty and my radiance right now, because that is the reality of it. And I'm like, you get to see me move this way. This is a damn gift.
Yeah. What a great way to like invite women to see each other.
Yes.
Because like that rubs up against so many sister wounds, right? Like it really blows it out of the water.
Definitely.
That kind of thinking. This podcast is brought to you by Honey Club and Reimagining Motherhood. Your spaces for intimacy and feminine embodiment and conscious parenting and inspiring motherhood. Come join us at julietanner.love and bridgetwood.life. I first danced with you 4 years ago and it was phenomenal. So of course I was coming back again, and it was really,
it's been 4 years either.
Oh, I can't believe it either. Clearly way too long.
Yeah.
But what I really found was places in my body that, having had my third child between the last time I danced and this time, what I got to bring to the dance floor and to myself as a result of the deeper embodiment experience of another birth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think like every time we go on a dance experience like this, or have any kind of experiential opportunity to deepen our connection to our body, we're always just invited to meet ourselves again, aren't we?
Always. Like that embodiment journey never ends. And I guess it never ends for a number of reasons. One, like, of course, there's only ever now, and in the moment you're constantly receiving information and stimulus. Like the present moment is filled with so much if we're open to it. But because we hang or cling so much to what was, like it's almost like there's not enough space to be able to really open this newness. That's how I experience it anyway in my body, but it's so ongoing. And of course, like, we're interacting with people much every day, and things are always happening in that relational field.
I love that reminder. And it's true, actually, isn't it? Because we're through those kind of the way that we define our sensory world based on what we've brought to it from the past, we then are blocking out so much potential because of that narrative that we bring in. So any invitation that we can meet that takes us to different places in our body or different places in terms of the desires that we're allowed to have in our own perception is an opportunity to rewrite something totally different.
Yes. Yeah, always.
I would love to know.
And it reminds me, I'm just thinking of a quote. It's by Deepak Chopra. I'm probably going to butcher it. But he says something about, do you want to be a prisoner of the past or a pioneer of the future? A prisoner of the past or a pioneer of the future. And I think for all of us, it's what I mean, when that inner critic voice gets really loud, essentially, like, you're just stepping into being that pioneer of your future.
Yeah. You're being asked to lean in and like rewrite that, like kind of take that inner critic off the driver's seat.
Yeah.
The dance floor as medicine. What have you seen?
I've seen it all.
I bet you have some amazing stories.
I think dance is ancient. It is something we just know to do. And even when I think of how music is created, like, it's an invisible thing. It's, when we speak about channeling, it's one way that I kind of see, like, I just think musical artists are just genius to be able to take nothing and give it like an invisible form that somehow penetrates people's body, heart, and soul. Like, I'm in total awe of it because I think it's just miraculous. Like, God is a DJ to me.
I love it.
So what have I witnessed? I would say the most miraculous thing that I witness each time, every time, even though there's maybe different flavors and expressions, is to really see how a body transforms from being maybe quite rigid We're tense, even small, cautious, protective, just a little guarded, to just this incredible opening, blossoming, expansive, freeing, liberating, expression of self is very visible to the eye.
It's so beautiful. And so many women, I think, come into it with an intention. Like I certainly thought about like, well, what is my intention? And it is to open the parts that feel like they've, taken the shape of closure or rigidity or inflexibility, right? Because our body is also taking on the shape of our thoughts. And so if I'm feeling tension and tightness and rigidity and I'm like kind of like stooping, then like where am I also doing that in my life?
Yes.
And I think, as mothers of young children, when it can be so easy to not prioritize our own expansion, like what you offer through these is just so, so powerful, because there's no room for like mother guilt or the 1,000 things that are going through your head because you're so pulled into your body.
Yes. Yeah. And even if someone's listening going, I feel guilt all the time. Like I can't even imagine what it'd be like to be free of that guilt. Another thing we do with the sacred dance, or the lens or the perspective that we approach it with, is you're not there to achieve a certain state. And I think when you kind of walk in with those expectations, be it on the dance floor or anything really, you limit yourself in terms of what you can really experience. Because if guilt is here now, then guilt is what we dance with. Like we allow that to just be part of how does guilt move? Feel like to be with your guilt, and like really, instead of maybe feeling like you shouldn't be feeling guilty or you just can't get out of it, we just invite it all. It's all here. And eventually, if everything is energy, then the guilt will eventually transmute into something else, and that something else, you stay with it long enough, transmutes into something else. And it eventually just gets lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter.
I love that. And even just that piece of safety with, if what you're bringing here is guilt, or if what you're bringing here is like low self-worth, or if what you're bringing here is deep judgment, then like don't try to leave that out at the door. Like dance with that here. Like let that be in your body and see how you want to move with that.
Yeah.
Which is just a beautiful welcoming of the parts of us.
Yeah. And ultimately, if the journey is about wholeness, then wholeness is also about acceptance. And acceptance is a really critical part of everything that you experience. I don't believe it's in, we can look at transformation and change, and it's very typical. Like the approach is we get rid of something.
Yeah.
Therefore, get rid of a part of ourselves in order to reach or experience something better. No. Or add something on. That's another thing. Things will get better once X, Y, Z. Or we try and just transcend it altogether, which is sometimes the bypass. Like, let's just skip over this and be with it. But I think, no, can you actually be with these aspects of yourself that, you don't really love or enjoy, or you have strong opinions, and just still meet yourself?
Yeah.
Not abandon yourself. Can you just still be here?
As you're saying that, it reminds me of one woman who was there who had an intention to love herself more. And I think her initial intention was, like love myself, like love and light, and like, that'd be all juicy. But what actually came up was like all the places she judges, all the places she shrinks, like basically her shadow. And she had this awareness, had enough awareness to say at the end, like, I realized that's what I was being taught to love.
Yeah.
Not just, I'll love myself when.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I thought was so beautiful.
So beautiful. And then I think let's turn that in terms of, because we're not islands, like we're in relationship with other people. I think it's actually really dangerous when we set ourselves up to feel like we have to do all this work on ourselves before we can truly be loved.
Yeah.
You actually learn to love yourself by receiving love from others. And so the loving maybe the parts that you're not proud of or really like, or that shadow aspect, and I'm still lovable.
Even with all this can still be loved.
Can still be loved.
It doesn't have to be like, yeah, as you say, transcended or minimized for me to be somehow more acceptable.
Yeah.
Which for conscious parents, I mean, we're seeking all of the time to accept the muck and the density and the rage and the tears that our children bring us. The journey is to do that for yourself too. Like, it's not just, I'll practice holding space for them. It's like, well, how can you also do that for you?
Yeah.
So you actually have one more date for Sacred Dance coming up, don't you?
Yes, just one more.
Just one more. The last hurrah for a little while.
Yeah, in Sydney this week.
In Sydney. So if we have any listeners in Sydney, you are in luck, because you too can have an amazing Sacred Dance experience. How would you explain it in a couple of sentences? Like, if you were to say, I mean, I didn't even have to read what it was about because I knew it was with you, so I was going to go. But if someone wants to know what they're getting themselves into, I know we've given people a good feel for it. But what's your kind of like couple of words around it?
Look, you're coming for a 3-hour unique embodiment experience that is one part workshop, one part 90-minute dance journey, where I will guide you through, I was going to say 7 phases, but I think this journey actually has 8 to be like really precise. But I'll guide you through literally like a transformational journey. I hope the person that you leave, or the person that you leave as, is very different to the person that you walk in as. And this particular journey is really about the journey back to our hearts.
Yeah, so beautiful. That's definitely how I experienced it. And you're doing a bit more work more broadly beyond offering the Sacred Dance experiences for women to also train others to facilitate. Can you share a bit about that?
Yeah, so this is new for me, stepping more into, taking this body of work that's evolved since 2013 to finally going, okay, I've got enough people asking, I want to do this, can you teach me? And I'm like, okay, here we go, it's time. And it's time because, and this circles right back to the very beginning of what we shared, I don't believe there are enough spaces, physical spaces, for women to come together and be together in this way. And whilst I think, COVID, these last 2 years, everything moved online, and online is great. We get to do these things. These last 2 events in Melbourne and Brisbane were just hands down big reminders that nothing can relate or replace that in-person experience. It's just...
It's so true. And I think a couple of us had said at the end, I didn't realize how much I was missing just the interaction of the touch of a stranger. Yeah. Or just being seen, or like at one point, I don't want to kind of give away the end of it, but at one point, like, someone kind of grabbed my arm, and like with such warmth, I almost burst into tears. And because at that point in the journey, like my sensory system was so heightened that I really felt every bit of the warmth of that touch. And like, we've just missed so much of that.
Yeah, we've totally been deprived of it. And particularly and it's a different kind of touch, because I think as mothers, we can sometimes feel touched out.
Yeah.
Children, and I'm really, really big. I wouldn't say you're actually touched out. It's that the touch that you've been experiencing is a take. The energy that your children have from touching you all the time and on your body is a take energy. But if you were to receive the touch, for example, from a masseuse, that is like pouring energy into your body, you would not be saying that you were touched out.
It's such a great point.
Yeah, it's about the energy and the direction of that energy with the touch. And that's just something to be aware of. But yeah, what I am enjoying about the teacher training is to train other women and help excavate like the gifts and talents that they bring, and fusing it with this body of work. Because I think this is the other thing, we need some more diversity. Whilst a lot of the journeys I curate reflect my own journey or my own desires and my own inspirations, that I think as more women can do that, they will bring their own stories, their own learnings, their own inspirations, and as a result be able to reach more people in a way that feels really good to them, whilst we're all essentially at the very core just bringing these elements of music, movement and mindfulness together to create safe spaces for women to unleash.
So beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and for sharing with me and everybody just this beautiful work that you do, and allow me a chance to also to kind of like relive my Saturday night.
Yeah, for me to hear some of it.
So where can people find you?
Best place is my website, susanafrioni.com. as I'm no longer on Instagram anymore.
I just can't believe this tragedy of losing your Instagram account.
I know, I'm in the sin bin. So it's been a great opportunity though, just to reevaluate life on the socials.
Yeah.
Put a lot more time back and a different level of creativity. But yeah, to find me, my website, and also you can sign up for my mailing list, because I feel like I'm a lot more personal with my writings now. It's the best way. Best news.
That was like, I was like thinking the heavens that I was on that list, because if you weren't on that list, you didn't know about it because you're not on Instagram. So mailing lists have a lot of value.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being part of the podcast. And yes, if people want to get in contact with Susana, you can head to susanafrioni.com. If you want to see what Jules and I have coming up, or to just connect with us, it's bridgetwood.life and julietenner.love. Remember to nourish the woman to rock the family, and we will see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey. Thank you so much for listening. We literally couldn't do this without you. Please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively into your life, then head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietenner.love to go deeper.
And if you feel like giving back a little to this free content, please rate us on iTunes or Facebook, all of which helps the podcast reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.